Does God have a name? The philosopher John D. Caputo wrote a book about the post-structuralist philosopher Jacques Derrida. It's called The Prayers and Tears of Jacques Derrida, Religion Without Religion. Caputo writes about Derrida's thoughts on the name of God and theism, or belief in God. Derrida claims that anyone should be interested in the subject of the name of God, even if you're not a Christian, and even if you're an atheist to him. To Derrida, this is the most fascinating aspect of mystical Christianity, like that of the famous Meister Eckhart and others, the name of God. Caputo says that what interests not only Derrida, but deconstruction itself, is that the name of God is the name of the quote-unquote holy other. And remember, from one of my previous video on Derrida and God, videos rather, that he uses Nietzsche's difference rather than difference to basically say that the concept of God is deconstructible, and he disagrees with Foucault, who is less favorable to God and religion than Derrida, because Foucault deconstructs religion and God all the time, but Derrida says that God is deconstructible. So that's what mystical Christianity has to do with deconstruction itself to Derrida. Anyway, so the name of God is the name of the quote-unquote holy other. The holy other is spelled WHOLLY space OTHER. It's a theological term that essentially means the difference between God and everything else. God is unimaginably different from everything else that exists. It's spelled the way that I said rather than HOLY, because God is even more different from the typical divine. From the typical divine holy God that people picture and discuss. HOLY means divine. HOLLY is not a lesser God because the word is spelled differently. The holy other is just as powerful, possibly more so, than a divine God. However, it is even more inconceivable than a divine God. The holy other is not even necessarily any more or less powerful, or even more or less anything, than the divine God. The holy God, the holy other rather, is just inconceivably different from any way we can contemplate or describe God. So keep that in mind with what I'm about to say in terms of Neoplatonist Christianity. This reminds me, once I get to it after difference, of course, this reminds me of Nietzsche's difference. Remember me mentioning this term in another video on this book? An oversimplified definition of that is even more different than different. To be clear, I don't think that Derrida makes the philosophical connection between the holy other and difference, because they're different terms. The holy other is specifically a theological term, and since Nietzsche was basically a militant atheist, difference is obviously not theological. Remember, that relates to what I said earlier about Derrida kind of betraying Nietzsche's meaning of difference to use to argue that God is deconstructible, rather than agreeing with Plato that God can be deconstructed. So, obviously, Nietzsche, militant atheist difference, his obviously not a theological term and favorable to God in that too. So that's a good way so even more different is still a very similar definition to inconceivably different, though, even though one is a theological definition and the other is not. So inconceivably different, or more different than different, is a good way to think about the holy other. I'd say you can think about it either way, just inconceivably different. The holy other is not anybody's proper name. The holy other is not a name. So God, according to Derrida anyway, God has no name. It's not called God, but I'll get to that. The holy other is not anybody's proper name. It is not saved for Christian Neoplatonism, Judaism, or any other specific religion. Derrida mentions these two in particular because he was an atheist Jew, so that makes sense that he would mention Judaism. And Christian Neoplatonism specifically is one of the three types of religion from which Derrida wanted to distinguish his own theological views to make them seem unique, as philosophers do, right? These are also the three main types of philosophical religious schools that Derrida wrote about. There's no need to get into the other two here, but my oversimplified definition of Christian Neoplatonism is Christianity heavily influenced by the famous ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who everyone knows about. This was popular during part of the Roman Catholic Empire. Also, the famous theologian Thomas Aquinas became a Neoplatonist Christian at some point after some of Plato's ancient works were recovered. They were lost to history for hundreds of years before them, which I think is interesting. So, does God have a name? What is the name of God? God is the Holy Other, but that is not its name. The Holy Other is inconceivably different from everything else. It is even more different than different. It is no one's particular controlled name. The Holy Other must be saved from all religions. I really like this line. It is not the private property of any determinable faith. It's that, Christians go around saying, "No, there's only my God." Jordan Peterson might say, "There's only my God. There's not the Muslim God. It's all my God. God belongs to Christianity." And then the typical like Southern or American guy will say like, "No, God is my God. It ain't no Muslim God," or anything like that. Anyway, the God, the holy God, or the name of God, or the holy other, is not the private property of any determinable faith. The name of God is not your God. Does God have a name? Fuck no. God does not belong to any particular religion. God has no name. Even quote unquote God is not the name. You have to use the word God to say the name of word of God, right? But we're saying the name of something and we have to use the word God because there's no other word. God does not belong to any particular religion. God has no name. Even God is not the name. It's simply the only word we have, even though there are multiple polytheistic religions with various gods in them. They're still called gods. The creator of the universe has no, we'll use that word instead of God. The creator of the universe has no name. The holy other has no name. God has no name.